Welcome to the Growing the Future podcast, where our future is always bigger than our past. Today on the show, my guest is leading the team in Canada here as the president of Corteva Agriscience. He has significant experience in the areas of operations, grain merchandising, sales and sales management, commercial management, seed production, supply chain, operations management, and senior leadership. He is an executive member of CropLife Canada and also sits on the board of directors. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics and political science, and throughout his career, he's lived in 8 communities in 4 different provinces. He's originally from Moosomin, Saskatchewan, just a stone's throw from where my brother and I grew up on the farm at Langeberg. So a neighbor as the crow flies, which is great. And his work has taken him far. It's allowed him to meet farmers from coast to coast while mentoring some of the industry's top stakeholders and managers. Today, we want to talk with him about leading a large organization that is always morphing and evolving. Specifically, I think it's interesting in COVID times, right? A large organization in COVID times. Another area, a topic of interest will be the convergence of sustainable technologies. I know Corteva is making some major moves on that. And then we'll get into a little bit about how Bryce sharpens the saw professionally, personally, so he can lead as best as possible his large and exciting team. Bryce Eger, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dan. Looking forward to the next, however long this is going to be. I'm it's a great way to be on a Friday afternoon. It's sunny outside. Get to talk to somebody from the home country, as we say, just across a valley, and looking forward to it.
Well, I appreciate that, and it is a good way to end the week, and it is time well spent, and I do really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, Bryce, because I think we've sort of been ships passing in the night previously before we talked about it. I think we were kind of saw each other at a distance at various functions, but we haven't had a chance to have an in-depth conversation, and today we are gonna.
Yeah.
So, Bryce, I guess the first thing that I would think of, or most people would be interested in, is what is it really like leading a large organization? What is it like?
What is it like? Well, it's a ton of fun, actually. I mean, there's no 2 days that are the same. So you get to you get a chance to be involved in a whole bunch of really, really cool stuff. Lots of innovation, lots of research, lots of future thinking. It's not simple. It's pretty complex. Even though we sometimes minimize what we do in agriculture, I think we need to kind of prop ourselves up a little bit. I mean, we've got the convergence of some of the strongest technology in any industry. We've got research and development at a very high level. We've got very sophisticated, not only customers and farmers, but also end users. And then there's the link into the consumer and making sure that we've got all that right. So it's every day is very, very different. Dynamic would be an understatement. Most days are full, and you leave the end of the day kind of I'll say in an somewhat exhausted state, but different exhaustion than what I remember, right? So you grow up and you're taught to work hard, and work hard was around sweat, right? Like you needed to really put a sweat out, and that's what it was about. And now it's about utilizing your brain to try and maximize what we're doing, and really trying to innovate and help farmers make sure that they're making the right decisions. So it is complex, when I think of it. No 2 days are the same. There are some things that are scheduled in advance, but in a lot of ways, every week is very very different, and so you just have to prepare yourself for the fact that you're not going to have answers to a lot of the things that are going to get put in front of you, and you just rely on a team of really, really strong people, which we're lucky to have, that are subject matter experts to help provide guidance around what we should be doing, and rely on them to make sure that they're offering their best opinions and best thoughts so that we can make the best decisions as a company. So yeah, it's tons of fun. It's a lot different than what I thought coming out of university, I thought I was, probably going to be a sales guy with somebody at some place. I'd thought about and had actually gone and written an LSAT and got into a couple of law schools. Very quickly decided that was, craziness, that I was not intended to be a lawyer. So this is fun. This is about as much fun as you can have. And of course, you get the opportunity to run a pretty substantial business with somebody else's money. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. I mean, we get a chance to look at shareholders and make sure that we're doing our level best for them as well. But we've got different stressors than an entrepreneur like yourself, right? It's just different.
It's probably a very entrepreneurial role within a large organization. But when I think of Corteva, what comes to mind is those maps on the dealership wall that show like the evolution of all the different equipment companies, like kind of like a Gantt chart going from left to right, all the consolidation. You guys have been through a ton of changes. Can you paint a picture for us what some of those changes have looked like over the years, and then what your organization that you're leading looks like right now?
Yeah, so I think most in our industry would know sort of the legacy organizations that made us up. So we came from DuPont Crop Protection, Dow Agrisciences. I mean, that legacy goes back years and years, right? You can go back to Eli Lilly and Dow Elanco, and I mean all the iterations there. And then of course the Pioneer Hybrid business was also the sort of the third leg of the stool as we came together to create Corteva. Oh, and by the way, I was going to mention you mispronounced it at the start. So my rule is that if you
no, I never
did too.
Did I say Corteva, not Corteva?
You did say Corteva, so that means that you got to make a donation to some local charity. Make it for whatever value you want, but if you mispronounce it at this point, I mean we're a few years old now, so you got to get that right, man. But anyways, from
and you told me that even in the green room.
From that standpoint, we I mean you've got those three legacy businesses that we brought together, and June 1st is our second birthday, really, right? So it's gone really fast. I mean, the merger was announced 5 years ago, but we really only became a company 2 years ago. So we brought all of that together, and the interesting part of merging all of that legacy and all that history is there were a number of similarities. Culturally, we had a lot of really, really talented people that were coming together to make the company become what we have today. The thing that we learned very early is that even though there were a lot of similarities, the differences were pretty stark. And so we've had to spend a lot of time the first couple of years really figuring out, how do we work, right? You've got, sort of I'll say the science and the engineering type brain that came from DuPont, right? That was the culture that came from that organization. And then on the far side of that was the Pioneer business, which was 100% entrepreneurial. And then the Dow business was in the middle. And so while there were similarities, there was a lot of sort of gnashing of teeth and a lot of differences in the way that we had operated. And so we've spent a lot of time the last 2 years figuring out how to become Corteva. And that's pretty happy with where we're at today. Very proud of our team because they had to really roll up their sleeves to get a lot of it figured out, and a lot of it was about being able to connect, right? Have conversations, understand where the other person was coming from, and then figure out, okay, this is how we're going to approach this as we go forward. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey the last couple of years, but we're we've come together in a really positive way. And the belief that we had when we came together to create the organization was that we could have a product portfolio and an organization that really was going to enrich the lives of farmers and provide an alternative in the marketplace that was going to push everybody in agriculture to a spot that was going to help make things better. And I think that we have. I think that competition is a good thing, and I think that everybody that we have in the marketplace is really working hard to be able to enrich, make things better for farmers. From our standpoint, I think that, our belief is that we've got the right mix of talent, products, and of course a future focus that's going to help us do that. So,
were you leading this charge right from the beginning? How long have you been in this role?
Yeah, so I was brought in to be the president of the Pioneer Hybrid business in 2005. So I was leading that business and then leading the DuPont crop protection business for a couple of years before we actually came together. And then, right from the start, right from the get-go, post the announcement of the merger, and then once we had originally merged the two parent companies, Dow and DuPont, I was leading the Corteva business in Canada. Yeah.
What surprised you about the merger?
What surprised me? Well, the number one thing is that every book that I read was wrong on what we should be
throw it out the window.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I don't mean they weren't 100% wrong, but every merger or acquisition is different, right? So you can take bits and pieces, even if the organizations are similar. The timing is different. What's going on in the marketplace is different. The socioeconomic situation is different. So every one of those items is, presents a different challenge. And so the books that I read a few different books on mergers and acquisitions. Most of them more from a scientific standpoint, meaning most of them were done by doctorates who had taken a look and analyzed. And then, of course, a few of the other, well-known ones, Built to Last and Good to Great, things like that from that Jim Collins, not our CEO, but the Jim Collins who authored those books. And a lot of what I read was helpful, but it didn't. There was no playbook that said, yeah, do A, then B, then C, then D, and everything's going to be just fine. That's the biggest thing that I learned. So being agile and being willing to say, yeah, that's the wrong decision. We need to step that back and fix that is probably the biggest learning over the course of this journey so far.
Well, and I think this is just an extension of that question, but what is the skill set that you thought you needed versus now looking back with the hindsight, the benefit of hindsight is the actual skill set that was needed in the role that you had to develop?
So probably the biggest thing that I had to develop, if I just stop and say, is that I needed to be more patient with what I didn't know. Meaning, you come into a role and you've developed over the course of your career, had a myriad of different experiences across the country and in different projects and things outside of Canada as well, and it created a really nice foundation, but I needed to be really, really comfortable letting go and saying, I don't know. And I said I don't know a lot, right? I still do. Still say I don't know, and we'll find an answer to that. But getting really, really comfortable with sort of the uneasiness of going from I knew the answers or I felt I knew the answers to, yeah, I don't really have a clue, and we're going to have to figure this out, right? There's a slide that I share a lot with our team, and it's just a picture of what people think success is, which is the straight line up, and then what success really is, which is the switchbacks and the squiggly line, and you still end up with an arrow that's going up, but it takes a lot more. And I use that a lot with our team because that's the reality of what we're dealing with. It's not doesn't come easy, and it's not just, well, because it was in a playbook or because we had, a consultant from outside that said, well, this is the way it should work. That's not necessarily the way it's going to work. It's kind of like life in general, right? You got to be able to handle the curves that get thrown at you and then just adjust course as much as possible. So that would definitely be the number one thing that I learned so far.
Oh, it's just so dynamic, such a ever-changing situation, and you throw in some of the complexity of the market, and then you throw in a pandemic. You were explaining to me that typically there's 55 or so in the office that are coming in, and now you're at a good day, you're at 6. I don't think, to be fair, most farmers, their lifestyle, their physical, occupational lifestyle has changed that much in COVID. But if you're leading a large organization like you are, just over a year ago, your business, the way that you do business, the way that you get to market, the way you interact with your clients, everything changed forever. What has that been like?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So we have somewhere north of 600 employees across Canada, and it's nearly equally split. We've got, around 200 people that are in research and development, around 200 that are in our seed production and supply chain, and then about 200 that are, commercial, so sales, marketing, those sort of roles. And of that, 600 plus, we would have somewhere around a third of those people, so somewhere around 200 that would be site dedicated, meaning they're going to a research site, they're coming into the office in Calgary, they're going into any of the research sites across Canada, and they're office based, but they also could be flexible, meaning we've got the ability to make it so they were flexible. And I mean, I remember the day that we said to everybody last March that, hey, go home. It'll be a couple of weeks. We'll get this thing looked after. We'll get it licked up. Be no worries. Yeah, we're just going to flatten this curve.
2 weeks to flatten the curve.
And then we had to figure out very quickly, you can work from your kitchen table. If you're used to working from an office, you can work from your kitchen table for a couple of weeks, right? We all do it. We all have laptops. We have the ability to do that. But really being able to pivot, and adjust course and make it so that we had the technology to be able to do what we needed to do properly. I mean, we were still in the fledgling stage of using things like Zoom and Teams, and all of that had to get not only downloaded and get so that we had people that had the ability to use the technology, but then there's also the change curve of getting comfortable with, okay, now I'm going to be looking at you on a screen. Like, this is going to be kind of freaky. It's, George Jetson type stuff. But most importantly, probably the most important thing that we've had to do is recreate the opportunity for people to connect, especially because of the fact that not only is their personal life, their work lives completely disrupted, but their personal lives have been disrupted, to an exponential degree beyond work. I mean, work for a lot of our team is the normal part of their lives still to this day, right? They know that they're going to be, putting in their 8 to 10 hours a day, and depending on the season and or longer. But they know that that's going to happen. They've had to learn how to do it in a different way. But then the compounding factor is, okay, I'm working from home. I've got kids that can't go to school because that's been, stopped and started a multitude of times. I've got family members I'm concerned about. And so really working through all of those challenges probably have been more important than the Corteva side of it, openly. I mean, the Corteva side of it, we have good people, and they know what they need to get done, and they've got a work ethic that is, untouchable. And so they go and get that done. The harder part is being able to provide support for them as they've had to deal with all the other stuff that's got tossed at them. That's been, that's probably been the bigger learning for me over the course of the last year, is the ability for humans to be able to work isn't the thing that we need to be thinking about. We do need to be thinking about making sure that they can have some sort of balance, because you can only stay in a, whatever this room is, a 12 by 12 office in my house. I can only stay here so long, right? You got to be able to get out and connect. So
how do you get what's in your head or your, I take it your vision is one of the most important things that you're providing to the organization as a leader. How, when they say 70% of the time, nobody else knows what's in your head. And I'd guess, like with an organization of 600, it could easily be a higher percentage than that. How do you get across where you want to take the ship, where you guys are pointing, what your mission, purpose, vision is, all that good stuff? How do you disseminate that down to like 600 people, and has it dramatically changed in COVID? Has it been more or less effective?
Yeah. So some days, I'll just answer it matter of factly. Some days I do it really well, and other days I do it terribly. There's things that that you learn that you need to be able to, I always do talk about 7 times 7 different ways to be able to explain and get people aligned on to what you're thinking. But when I think of how we do it and how we've changed, probably the number one thing that's changed, of course, is just not being able to be physically present, right? So from my standpoint, a lot of my travel, I think back pre-COVID was out in the field, right? So I really do enjoy being out with our team with customers as well as with retailers, with our research team at the research sites, our production team. So being able to be physically present has, created a few obstacles in, I'll say, my MO of the way that I like to communicate with our team. What we've done is you just sort of amp up the communications in other ways and trying to not make it an email, right? Because people don't need another email. There's things that we need to be able to put out in a memo, and we do that. So we do that regularly. I think every organization does. But we also have really tried to, have regular face-to-face, whether it's, company-wide town halls where we get on and we talk about what's going on. We try and leave a lot of that time, open for people to ask questions, right? It's not about a PowerPoint slide deck, spitting out what's happening. It's about, okay, what's really going on and what do people want to know, and trying to make it as conversational as possible, through a large town hall. We've done that. Personally, I have coffee chats that I schedule with folks, and literally there's some of them that are just wide open, and I'll end up with a couple hundred of our employees that'll just literally grab a cup of coffee on a Monday morning and jump on, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in business, and we'll kind of catch up on what the latest is, and they'll ask a few questions and I'll ask a few questions, and we'll have a 45-minute dialogue. So we've adjusted course in doing that. And our whole team, I'd say, has done a really nice job of that. All of our people leaders have made not only the formal business type connections, but also the informal business type connections, meaning schedule time for just to have coffee, right? We miss that. We don't get the opportunity to do that. And so that's been a couple of the things that we've tried to put a focus on. And then the other thing is really just trying to connect with as many folks one-on-one as possible, right? So I have just a regular schedule that I have for myself every week, and I pick a handful. Some weeks it's 3, some weeks it's 5 employees, and I just schedule half an hour with them to catch up. And so they're impromptu. There's no reason other than to find out how they're doing and to connect with them. And so that's a few of the things that I've done to try and provide a little bit of normalcy for myself, but also to make sure that I'm staying connected with what the heck is going on. And all of those are opportunities to talk about what we're doing as a business, make sure that there's alignment around the vision and strategy that we've got in place, and answer any questions. Inevitably, there's tons of questions. So it's about, continuing to have those conversations multiple times over the course of a year.
What is it that you and the organization are talking about most internally in terms of obstacles for you succeeding strategically for your mission to get to the market? What's the biggest theme in the last year or two about getting to market for your organization?
Well, the last year has definitely been how do we learn to operate under these circumstances, right? We're a business that's we're a small but mighty important part of Corteva globally, right? I mean, as a country, but also as a business. So we have had to figure out how do we make sure that we don't get lost in the shuffle of a larger organization that is, there's 21,000 employees globally, and half of our business, or close to half of our business, happens south of the 49th parallel. And so we've had to really put a lot of effort into making sure that we don't get sort of lost in the work that's going on in other parts of the world, and that we continue to make really good strides with internal connections. And then, of course, the normal disruption. I mean, you have a ship that gets stuck in the Suez Canal. That always just adds to the fun. And an ice storm in Texas that causes some supply chain disruptions. And
It's a great meme, though.
Yeah,
Let's be real.
Yeah, it's a great meme, and everybody's going to have fun with it. I guess I read today that they're not letting it out of Egypt. It's got to pay some huge fines before they'll actually let it leave. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that ship. But I mean, all of those things under normal circumstances.
Don't drink and ship.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and under normal circumstances, without COVID kind of hanging over top, they would be, difficult in and above it themselves. But when you've got an organization that is still figuring out how to transition, working remotely, and then managing through it, basis, what's going on in all the different parts of the world, it's a big deal. It's a lot of work. Day to day work is not on April 16th of 2021 is nothing like even April 16th of 2020, but it's a whole world apart from what work was like on April 16th, 2019. Like it's not the same. So
no doubt. As an organization, then looking at the industry, if you're whiteboarding it, what do you think are the biggest challenges that farmers are facing, and how are you guys trying to solve that for them?
Let's see. So biggest challenges, I think, continuing to stay ahead of the productivity that's required for profitability is important. We play an important role, I think, as a life science company. I think all of the life science companies, all of the companies that are looking at research and development and innovation, our number one job is to continue to create products that allow for profitability on the farm. And we talk about this a lot internally. I'm a strong proponent of I know where my paycheck really comes from. Corteva signs the check, but that's not who pays my check. My check's paid for by farmers, because I earn my living off their acres. That's how I earn my living. That's and I get reminded of that all the time when I have a conversation with my brother-in-law back in Manson, Manitoba. That he does remind me of that the odd time, that I do earn my living off his farm in one way, shape, or form. But it is important for us to be able to really make sure that we are balancing the productivity and the profitability, and that never leaves our sight around how we're actually developing new products. And it's a big challenge because information is shared broadly and easily globally very, very quickly, and we aren't able to manage or necessarily navigate all of what happens in the grain markets, as we all know. I mean, at the end of the day, we are an exporting nation, so we have to figure out how to create the right volume and profitability matrix that allows the farmer to be able to make a bottom line, especially from an efficiency standpoint as well. So that's an important part of the challenge that we have in front of us. I think the other important thing, and maybe this is a little more future facing, is really trying to stay in front of, so what are the opportunities that we need to be able to present to customers, and how do we link what the farmer really wants to be able to do, which is at the heart of most of our farmers in Canada. They want to be really, really good farmers. That's what they want to do, and they've got differing levels of management experience, different levels of educational experience and operational experience, but ultimately they do what they do. Even the largest farmers, at the end of the day, they get really, really excited and giddy when they get a chance to smell the dirt, and they get the first time they get to put the crop in the ground, and the first load that comes off the field in the fall. We're all just like little kids. And so our job is to continue to make sure that we can bridge that, and that continues to be part of what we do. So what we have to be able to do, and I think this is an important role for us at Corteva, is help bridge that with consumers and make sure that the folks that are moving in to the Calgarys of the world, the Vancouvers of the world, the Torontos of the world, the Montreals of the world, they understand the importance of what agriculture represents, and that we do our level best to not only cheerlead but also lead from the front with a voice that talks about the importance of what modern agriculture does. So those two things are, I'll say, weigh on me a lot. I think about how we are doing in providing profitable products for customers and making sure that they have profitability built into what we're doing, while also looking at the Corteva side of it and making sure that we've got the right amount to be able to reinvest to innovate. And then the second part is making sure that we continue to have the ability to access and do the things we need to do as an industry, and connecting that to the consumer so that they feel comfortable with what we're bringing from a technology standpoint to enable that to happen.
10 years from now, what do you think, if a farmer could see his future self and how he's running his operation, what would be the most surprising thing to him, and how will Corteva be a part of that?
Yeah, so I've been reading a bit about the future of agriculture, and in the last little while, a few of the books that I've been reading have been not just focused on agriculture, but I do think that technology is going to continue to on the upswing. And I do think the use of technology on the farm is going to continue to be something that, farmers are going to look back, and whether it's spray technology in the field, whether it's, the implementation of broader precision or variable rate technologies, whether it's, drone-based spray applications or spot spray applications, that is going to continue to accelerate, right? So, I've been around for 26, 27 years in this industry. And, I remember one of the first things that I heard about when I came in, started working for Cargill back in 95, was the fact that, precision ag was going to be the next big thing. And it was just going to happen. And we're still at the point where, we still have a ways to go for that original view. I mean, yeah, we've got auto steer and we've got things like that. But I do think that in 10 years, because of what's going on in the consumer market, it allows scale for a lot of the technology, right? In agriculture, we've got there's only so many people that can bear the brunt of, I'll say, getting the technology to market, and that's a high cost for, call it 100,000 farmers in Canada. That's a high cost for that technology to come. But when you say that there's, 30 million consumers that could have access to, whether it's, the next level of automated vehicles, whether it's, all of that AI technology suddenly becomes easier to be able to implement across agriculture because it's being used broad scale in a lot of other industries. And so I think that in 10 years, I'm not going to say that, a completely automated farm is going to be the reality, but the ability for a farmer to be able to know and monitor what's going on their farm and be able to take near proactive or very proactive measures to be able to maximize what they're doing, I think it's going to be a reality in 10 years. I really do. And from our standpoint, we've got to be able to think of, well, what does that mean for our products? What does it mean for the technology that we're putting into a bag of seed that we need to be thinking about, the next iteration? What does it mean for our crop protection products? And then, of course, what does it mean from our digital standpoint with our, our granular business side of things, as well as the next group of products that we've got on the development shelf as it speaks to digital agriculture. So it's a pretty fun time. Like, you really think about it. I think about, late 90s with the implementation of genetically modified crops. And now we're on the burgeoning into the space where the modern farm is going to take, I think, a fairly significant leap in the next decade. And doesn't mean that every farm is going to jump right in. But I do think that if we take a picture 10 years from now, we come back on this podcast on the 16th of April in 2031, and we talk about what we've seen over the last decade, I think we'll be pretty amazed with what's happening. Because the convergence for me, the convergence of what's going on in agriculture and what's going on in consumer lives is where we actually get to the point where it becomes more scalable, because the cost of bringing it to the few in agriculture just becomes that much easier to have happen. So.
Scale. Interesting comment. Well, I think we should put on our calendars and circle back and listen or watch this before we go on and check out your predictions. I'm wondering about carbon sequestration. Is this for real? Can farmers get paid for it, or are we just paying homage and lip service to unicorn farts because this is the way the world's trending and people want it that way?
Well, so I think there's a way for farmers to get paid. I think the concern that I think has been raised by a number of associations in Canada, especially since the federal government has released sort of their plan, I think is we're at a point where all of the work that's happened essentially the whole time that I've been in this industry, the shift from min-till to zero-till and all of that sequestration that's happened in the last 20 years is not really on the table basis what we see today. And so I think that that's something that'll have to get figured out. And I do believe that, there's a lot of energy that's going to go into trying to figure out how that might look. But I think there's other places, as we think about what we're doing from a fertilizer utilization standpoint, what we're doing, and I'm not here saying that we're going to go into mass cover cropping and a bunch of those items. Like that's not my expertise, and I don't know that well enough. But I do think that changing some of the timing of what we're doing from a fertility standpoint, changing the accuracy of what we're doing from a fertility standpoint. There's still, some other acres that there's probably opportunity to look at some of those other technologies, whether it is cover cropping or other items. Like I said, I'm not a subject matter expert on it, but there's enough energy globally from governments around the world. And you can say, leave China and India out of it and leave a lot of South America out of it at this point, because they're in a different stage of development of their economies. But if you take most of the first world countries and you look at what those governments have sort of pledged in some way, shape, or form, there's probably a higher willingness to try and figure out how do we move the needle on this. And so I think that there's going to be continued energy poured into it. And I think that, the current state of change that's happened, look to the south, right? So you go from the new administration in the U.S. has made a stated, claim that they're going to figure this out, and they're going to figure out how to make all industries, I'll say more neutral over the course of this administration as a start. So they've got 4 years. They really have 3 years to really make headway, because they spend the last year of the cycle in campaign mode. So they really have 3 years to be able to, and now really 2.5, I guess, as I'm saying this, they have 2.5 years to try and implement some things that are going to be impactful, and they've already started to take steps. And so I do think that farmers will get paid. I will say, if you ask me sitting here today, do I think that it's going to be a lucrative payment? I would say that I wouldn't say that I would put it as lucrative. I wouldn't say that it's going to be margin matching to what they're seeing on the farm. But if they're able to, if we're able to figure out how to get the coordination of effort to those that require the credits, to those that have the credits, I think that there is some margin to be made. But that's, I guess we'll know more in the next little while as we start to understand more and more of what the federal government and then the provincial governments are trying to do to align to what we've got going on from a climate policy standpoint.
Well, maybe you're not a subject matter expert on this either, but even just philosophically, if you care to, do you think we're focusing in on the right things? I mean, yeah, let's face it. Everybody's on this track because they care and they see this as a priority to survive, and they care more and more about animals and planet Earth, and we all do. But are we focusing on the right things, really?
Well, so it's interesting that you asked that. I think if you asked any one of our, and I'll stick to agriculture because it's the people that I like the best.
Yeah, they're the best.
If you ask any farmer if they want to do what's right for their farm, what's right for the soil, what's right for the generation that's going to take over the farm in 10 years or 15 or 20 years from them, I don't think I've met a farmer that would say, no, I just want to go and, I want to, I'm just here for a short time, and I just want to make as much money as I possibly can. I mean, I know that they exist, and they're not unicorns, but the vast majority of the farms that I've ever had the pleasure of dealing with and talking to, that's not the way they think. And so the idea of doing what's right for the environment and sustainability and, being part of the solution, I think is innate to our industry. And there's something that we need to figure out how to tell that story more effectively, because, well, I'll share a story from a few years ago, and I've shared this with I think a few times. We had my son was playing hockey when we lived in Saskatoon, and we had a parents' party, which is inevitably what you end up doing, right? It's not about the kids, it's about the parents. And so we were sitting around having a few beer, and somebody inevitably asked the question, found out that I worked in agriculture, and started asking me about high clearance sprayers, and saying, well, look, like they're spraying like all these gallons of this chemistry across these acres, and like it's harming the environment. And we had a good conversation. And so I got out my shot glass, literally took a shot glass off the side mantle of this house, and got a can of beer, and said, okay, I said, well, fill that shot glass. And I said, now I want you to go and go over to the football field over at the high school, and I want you to spread that shot glass across the football field. And I want you to tell me where it went. And the person said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what you're seeing in a high clearance sprayer isn't, that whole tank isn't full of chemical, right? That's not what's going on. There's a small portion of it that actually is actual chemistry. The rest of it is water. The rest of it is water. Even in a jug of chemical, there's only so much actual chemistry in it beyond water and some other items. And so we need to figure out how to make sure that people understand that, because from an environmental standpoint, there's a lot that's going well, but agriculture, we've kind of just went about our business, and we haven't told a very compelling story. And it's just because that's not in our nature. It's not in our nature to get on top of the podium and sort of brag about what we're doing. But there's so much that is going on, whether it's, differences in technology, the precision side of what we're doing, min-till or zero-till that's taken place. And all of that tells a pretty compelling story when you think about how disparate it could be. You've got a whole bunch of entrepreneurs that are entrepreneurs at the end of the day that are really looking for an opportunity to do what's best for their business. But the funny part is that they've done what's best for their business at the same time as doing what's best for the environment and stewardship. And not in every case have they had an economic gain because of it. So it's not just always about following the money. And I think that as an industry, we need to accelerate and amplify the message around that, because we have a lot of really, really good people who are talented, who get the science of what goes on a farm, and they've been doing it and evolving over the course of hundreds of years. There's a lot of people that we can help gain a better understanding if we tell that story, I think.
I love that. And when you talk about that, I think about how chemistry got us to where we can afford to have a wonderful heated home with a beer in aluminum can shipped from God knows where. It gets poured into a shot glass made from whatever, fossil fuel in it. Like, this is the foundation upon which our entire lives are predicated, that gives us the time and energy to have an opinion that we can really get sometimes really excited about on social media. But I see a trend from a chemistry-based world to more of a more sophisticated biological world, where a lot of the biological tools are starting to rival the efficacy of the chemistry that we've been using that might be harsher for the environment. So where does Corteva fit into, I'm practicing saying the name right if you haven't noticed. Not that I'm not going to make a donation to, yeah. But where does this whole biological trend of biologicals fit into Corteva's strategy?
Yeah, so we have a strategy. We have a biologicals business actually. It's actually being run globally by a gentleman who used to be in Canada, named Frederick Badeau, who used to run the DuPont crop protection business in Canada, up until about 5 or 6 years ago. And so we see it as being complementary, right? So there's places, doesn't matter if we talk agriculture, if we talk other industries or other parts of our lives. There's a spot where we can have sort of the biological complement the synthetic, and we see that as an important tool. We see it as a really good opportunity for farmers to continue to look at the newest technology that's out there. And I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of what we take for granted came from a biological method in some way, shape, or form, right? Like at the end of the day, the biggest innovations started by what was happening just in someone's pot on the side of a stove. Inevitably got us to the point where we realized that there's something to this. So from our standpoint, biologicals are important. We think that they are an important tool in the toolbox, and something that there's definitely going to be a lot of energy put into developing those technologies. The piece that we're thinking about and focused on at Corteva is openly making sure that what we're doing as we launch some of these products, that there's value, and it again comes back to providing a profitability and for the farmer, for the product, because there's lots of things that if we don't if we aren't somewhat careful, we've got to be able to make sure that we are offering products out into the marketplace that farmers can say, I know that it's going to work. It may not work exactly the same, so we've got to educate, right? Because they've become very used to, and all of us have become very used to. You run that 90-foot boom over top of a field, and you come out a week later, and the crop is green and the weeds are brown. I mean, that's what we've got ourselves, into the mindset of. And in some cases with biological products, that's not necessarily what you're looking for, and that's not necessarily what their efficacy is going to be. So there's a change curve of educating all of us that are coming from the innovative side of things right out into the farm gate, to be able to make sure that there's an understanding of what the technologies bring and where they can be beneficial. But I do see a place, and I do think that it's an important part of our messaging, even as we think about the consumer side of things. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be better, but I think that they are tools in the toolbox that, from our standpoint, we see an opportunity for for a lot of positives out of that view of technology. And I mean, we have a number of products within Corteva. So use our nitrogen stabilizer products. They're green chemistry award winners from 20 years ago. We've got our spinosyns, insecticides. They're green chemistry award winners in the U.S. because they're biological. At the end of the day, it's a biological product. It's not something that's made synthetically. And so there are a number of those examples across the industry, and I think that it'll just continue to build out over the next while.
Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night and worry that you're going to miss the mark with all this change? You're going to be like Blockbuster or something?
Yeah, Blockbuster. Actually, I just watched that on Netflix.
Oh, did you? I want to see that. I'm going to watch that.
Yeah, you should. It's actually quite interesting. There is still one, I guess, in Bend, Oregon. Yeah.
Great lessons in business there, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I have a.
Like, how did they miss that?
Well, I think. When you watch the show, you'll learn. I learned stuff that I didn't know that actually had taken place, where there was an opportunity for them to actually own Netflix in a. Yeah, they just didn't quite execute on it. But So I have a book that stays next to my bed, actually. So when you say, do I ever wake up in the middle of the night? I wake up in the middle of the night a lot, actually. And I have a book that I write down those thoughts, because I found that what I used to do when I was in my 30s is I wouldn't write them down, and then I was up all night. And that was okay when I was in my 30s, but then when I got into my 40s, I realized, yeah, I need to get a little more sleep. So I do have a book that has a number of the sort of the oh crap, what's going to happen items. There's some really good ideas in there too, but a lot of it is, okay, I got to get this garbage out of my head so I can get some sleep. And yeah, so I will say that I do think about where is it headed and what do we need to be thinking about to continue to, I'll say, divert course and still provide, great products into the marketplace, but also have, I'll say, a toe dipped in the water on the innovative side of things, to make sure that, from a competitive standpoint, selfishly as an organization that's all in. I mean, we are 100% agriculture. We don't have any other parts of a business that are supporting us or propping us up. So our life is 100% thinking about the farm and thinking about agriculture. So yeah, there's the odd night when I wake up and say, oh shit, I got to be thinking about what's happening next. So yeah.
Well, you know what that really makes me think about is mental health and how sleep is so important. And sometimes it's good if you wake up in the middle of the night and you have an idea, and maybe one of those 10 ideas is actually half decent and comes to life, and that's your baby. But a lot of the time it's, your mind's working and you can't shut it off, and you're working with 600 folks. The number one reason globally people aren't coming to work in a day, my friend, is mental health now in some way, shape, or another. And of course we're dealing with an amplification of this situation in COVID. So talk to me a little bit about, mental health as the head of 600 souls, the captain of a ship of 600 souls on board.
Yeah. So I'll share very openly with you and with whoever happens to listen to this, is that because I've shared it with our team. So, I personally, I've gone through a whole cycle, right? I've gone through cycles myself, because you go through days where you don't have answers, and we're kind of all raised to a certain extent, or at least I was raised to be, you're kind of 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and you're expected to be able to solve, and you work a little harder, and that's how you get through it, right? And then you realize that the brain is the most important part of your infrastructure within your body, and it's the most important muscle that you have, and you need to actually take care of it. And so, a number of years ago, I'd always had different executive coaches and I'll say business coaches, right? And one of them that I was working with said, I think you need to talk to a counselor. And I looked at her and I was like, I need to what? And she said, I think you need to talk to somebody. You got a full on game of, you got like 6 games of ping pong going on in your head right now, Bryce. And I think you need to talk to somebody. And so I did. So, a number of years ago, probably 6 years ago now, I started talking to a counselor very regularly. And to this day, I still do. And I put those people as part of my coaching and my development as a human and as a leader. And I wouldn't go anywhere without them, right? You got a coach that coaches you on how you need to be able to be more effective at speaking and being able to do these sort of things, and how to be better at at golf. I'm right. I don't have a golf coach anymore, but you've got all of these coaches in your life. And then you stop and realize that the most important thing that you really need to have coaching on is what's going on between the 6 inches between your ears. And so, my view about mental health is exactly that. I mean, I've had a counselor or a coach for about 6 years now. I've got another great one. We moved to Calgary about 1.5 years ago. So we got about 4 or 5 months before the pandemic hit, and then we were, here. And I've got a wonderful counselor coach here that I talk to on a monthly basis, and it's for me, it's pivotal to be able to be function at the top of your game, because you can have the best ideas, but if you're not able to actually sort of work through the challenges that life throws at you, COVID throws at you, then you put yourself at peril. So for me, I'm a big proponent of mental health support and resourcing. And my counsel within our team at Corteva is, I'm very open around the fact that there's nothing wrong with going and having a conversation with somebody. And we have the luxury, right? I mean, I do say this, we have a luxury because of the benefits that we offer our people. They have the ability to call somebody basically anytime they want to. We don't have that at the farm, right? Like for our customers, a lot of them don't have that. And, foundations like Do More Ag are so important to be able to create awareness, but there are places to be able to get that support. And so, I kind of rambled a little bit, but for me, Dan, it's super important, because if we don't have the infrastructure and the support network around what's going on between our ears, it's a pretty delicate spot. And as an industry, we're isolated in general. I mean, yeah, we have a great team at Corteva, and as an industry, we are a very close industry, right? Everybody went to school with somebody else that's either running part of a company or, out in the field with sales reps and all the rest of it. We're a very close industry, but we're isolated because a lot of our people in the whole industry are working remotely, and all of our customers work remotely. They may live in the city, but they go and earn their living by themselves in a tractor or in a combine for 12 to 14 hours a day for a lot of the year. So you got to be able to have support on the mental health side of things. It's super important. And I would be, I'm a huge proponent of making sure that people have access to that, because that is what life, the most important part of life is actually what's going on in the story you're telling yourself in your brain. So.
We talked about getting your vision down to your whole team, and that's often the issue. But another thing I wonder about in leadership, and I maybe struggle with myself, is oversharing. And if your emotional expression is really high, you want to share everything with everybody all the time. But obviously, the level that you're at, I mean, you don't want to confuse the troops, and you need clarity, but you need consistency. And often there'll be a gap between what you know and where you want to go with things, and what you can actually share with everybody. So how would you counsel somebody in a leadership position in terms of, maybe sharing too much at times, or how do you throttle yourself? And, I can't share that yet, whether you're excited to, or you want to break it to somebody or whatever it is. How do you deal with that? Because it's kind of a lonely position at times. Hey?
Yeah. So the way that I've dealt with it is, so I take copious amounts of notes, and I have never transitioned completely to doing everything electronically. I still keep my notebooks. I still prioritize the things that my big rocks, right, on a weekly basis and monthly basis, the big rocks of the things that are most important that I need to get done. And then as it sort of bridges over into what I communicate and when, I really try and prioritize back to, well, what's really the most important thing that I can provide that person at this time? Because I think of, pieces of reference and frames of reference. So each one of us can only take in so much information. We can take in lots, but our ability to actually understand it, then be able to take a position and make a plan to move forward. There's only so many things that any one of us can ever do. So if I'm really trying to be methodical, I try and come up with those items on a weekly and monthly basis. And then, depending on the timing that's the best for the individual person, but also for Corteva as a company, then go and have those conversations, over time. And I meter it out, right? So try not to dump 10 messages into a presentation or into a conversation. It's what are the one or two really key things that people need to really understand, and then typically I'll come back to them. So as an example, if if we've got something that's going on in the business, we'll typically come out, we'll do a broad-based, I'll have a conversation with a broad part of the team, leadership at the start, then we'll go down into the people leaders, then we'll go broadly within the organization, and then we'll circle back. So we'll do that, and it'll be multiple times, multiple different ways, so that people get a chance to go through their own individual change curve, as well as understand and make sure that they've got their questions answered. But it really is a metering. The most important thing is metering it back, because also making the decision on what's the stuff that actually is important. Because in an organization like ours, literally someone could sit and spend 12 hours a day reading email. There's just a proliferation, because you've got all of these people within the organization. And I say that not because it's a bad tool, but there's a point where that tool has been used a little bit too much. So my job as a leader is to make sure that there's only the things that really are going to have the largest impact, going back to our strategy, going back to our priorities as a business. Those are the ones that get shared, and some other stuff. Hey, there's things that may have been important to a small number of people. So let's say, important to less than 2 or 3% of our population in Canada. And I've also gone back to people that were concerned because they didn't know about some of those things, and apologized and said, I made the decision at the time that it wasn't important in the grand scheme of things. It wasn't going to be something that was going to have a differential improvement in the lives of 600 employees. And so you just make those adjustments. And if you do piss somebody off, you own it. That's the only way to deal with it. So.
Yeah, I've been there. I wasn't asking for a friend. I was definitely asking for myself there. So that's good advice. I appreciate that. So how do you focus on improving yourself, Bryce?
Yeah. So I guess I do a number of different things. I guess on the learning side of things, I am an avid reader, so I read a lot. I read at least a book a week. I used to read that much, and then I got off that cycle, and then COVID, actually, it's a positive that's come out of COVID. So I'm back at least a book a week. I do audiobooks, and then I actually read books. So I have 2 books on the go every week, and I try and finish both of them. One of them I listen to when I'm exercising, or when I'm out for a walk, or when I just need a break. I'll actually shut off my computer and say, I just need 15 minutes. And so I flip on an audiobook and just let my brain go there. So I'm a big proponent, and I'm a big proponent of reading because somebody's done the work already, right? You don't have to go and do the research, because you've got all these brilliant minds that have looked at organizational psychology, that have looked at, leadership and leadership styles, and they've done the research, right? There's citations out the wazoo in the back of most of these books. So I'm a big proponent of being efficient. So reading is an important part of what I do. I also really do think that there's a lot of really good content that's available online. There's some garbage online. It's like anything else, right? There are some places online that are kind of garbage based. But one thing that I've done fairly frequently in the last little while is picked a few courses on LinkedIn Learning. So LinkedIn is an interesting place, and I do enjoy spending a few minutes every day sort of browsing through what's going on and learning from that. But within LinkedIn, there is LinkedIn Learning, and there's a number of really, really good courses that are available. Everything from brushing up on financial accounting and management accounting, to leadership, to mental health awareness, to pick a topic, and it's on LinkedIn Learning. So that's another spot that I go to. And then there's another online learning center called Coursera. And Coursera is cool. It's got courses from Stanford and Harvard, and they offer a lot of free courses that you can take. And I've taken a few things there as well. So those are the sort of that part of it. And then you and I were talking earlier on around podcasts and jumping on and utilizing some of those for the learning, but also for the refresh, right? So you can go to Joe Rogan, or you can go to things things I wish I learned in history class, or stuff you should know, or I'll just open up my podcast that I've got, and I'll give everybody a sense of what I listen to. So, Gary V. So Gary Vaynerchuk, I'm a big proponent of his. I like the way that he talks and is very direct around his marketing. So I follow him. Harvard Business Review, big proponent of that. One that I've got onto recently is one by the guys that wrote Freakonomics. I don't know if you've read that book, but it's called No Stupid Questions. It's a great podcast as well. They've got so the latest one that they just added is Laziness Real, right? So it's and the podcast literally talks about some of the generational, misnomers around, oh yeah, millennials are lazy. Well, no, they're not. They're just motivated by different things, and so you've got to understand that. So lots of stuff there. And then I'm a huge proponent on the physical side as well. I was fairly portly a couple of years ago. I was up. I'd gained a lot of weight, and to the point that my mom, bless her soul, she passed away last February, but we had her 80th birthday in May of 2019, and she sat across the table in the Fleming Bar. That's where she wanted to go for her birthday supper, was the Fleming Bar. For those listeners who know the Windsor Hotel in Fleming, Saskatchewan.
I think I've drank there.
We're sitting across from each other, and she said, "You're kind of getting fat." And I said, "Oh." She said, "Yeah, like you need to back away from the table there, pork chop." And so I got back into taking care of my physical health too. And so
that's awesome.
I ride my bike a lot. I do CrossFit, and you got to have a balance, right? You got to push the mental side, but also you got to push the physical side a bit too. So yeah.
But the bike is amazing, eh?
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of jumping on a bike and going for 50, or I only did a couple of 100Ks last year. I just didn't make the time, but I'll zip off 50. Actually, tonight I'll probably go. It's a beautiful night in Calgary, so I'll probably jump on and go for a 50K little cycle around the city, and yeah, it's awesome.
Good for you. I was wondering, it might be a stupid question, and I've heard this, an average CEO reads like 60 books a year. How do you read a book a week? Like, how do you do that?
So 20 minutes in the morning, 40 minutes at night, gives me 7 hours a week, and most books I can zip through in 7 hours. So that's when I'm reading. When you're listening to audiobooks, you can crack through an audiobook at two times speed, right? Because you can really zip through them. So, I went for a walk this afternoon. I'm listening to a book right now about a hermit from Maine, and he lived in the wilderness. It's a true story. Chris Knight was his name, or is his name, and he lived in the woods in Maine for 27 years by himself. Never had contact with another human being. And this, like, they just found him in 2013. But you can zip through that. Like, I'm halfway through it. I went for a 45-minute walk this morning and a 20-minute walk over lunch, and you would run it at 2 times speed, and you're zipped through it in no time. So,
well, I think that's interesting, and I just want to know exactly how you do that, but if you think about that, I mean, we spend an hour a day doing a lot of things that has way less value. And I think of like the lifetime of wisdom. Somebody cared, and like, this is the work of their life. This is the thing that they cared most about, worked probably the hardest to get. I mean, if you ever written, it's a hard thing. Even just social media is a really hard thing to pump out, let alone a book. Are you going to write a book, you think, at some point? You thought about that?
I keep threatening everybody that there's going to be a chapter in my book, and there's some that are good chapters and some that are not. So interestingly enough, I jot down my notes from every book that I read. So I've got a number of I'm looking over on my bookshelf in my office here at home, and I've got a number of volumes from all the books that I've read. At some point I might. I don't know if I'd write it to publish it, other than so I journal every day. So you talk about mental health. So I do journal every day, 10 to 15 minutes every day. I jot down what was good, what was bad, and what I'm thankful for. And so that might be a good one to read. I think if you have one book that you're going to read in the next little while, you do need to read Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights if you have not read it. It is.
I've heard good things, and I've seen him on a few shows. You shared something on that too, I think, didn't you? Online, you were saying how good it was.
Yeah, on LinkedIn. Yeah, I don't know if I shared it on LinkedIn yet or not, but it's an amazing book. I mean, you talk full frontal. You learn stuff about him and his family that just matter of fact about stuff. But it might be in that sort of context because it's just real. It's not trying to solve. He's just sharing his own views on what he's learned and how he's dealt with the things that he's dealt with. And, he's got an opinion and he's willing to share it. And I think that's an important way to live too. So
how did you get onto the journaling thing, and what's the structure? Is it just free form?
So I got onto journaling, way back in like 1999, maybe 99, 2000. And I was part of a development program when I worked for Cargill. So they had a development program for, I guess, emerging leaders is what they called it. And one of the things that they taught us was to journal. And so my journaling is actually TIL. So today I learned, right? So that's the format that I use. It's the format I've used for over 20 years now. So today I learned, and you write down what you learned. You write down what you messed up, and you write down what you fixed. So those are the three things that are the start. And then from there, I always try and end every day with, a couple of things that I'm thankful for. And so that's, it's just part of the deal, right?
So why don't we do that then to wrap up the show? What did you learn today, and what are you grateful for today?
Sure. What did I learn today? Well, I learned that this microphone is a large unit, and that it actually works really well. No.
You got to get yourself one, bro.
No, I actually, when you sent it,
you sound beautiful.
When you sent it to
you just sound great on the show.
When you said, I got some things I need to send you for this podcast, I was thinking, I don't know what he's sending me. I got a perfectly good set of AirPods that I can talk to on this podcast. So one of the things I learned is that probably the most important thing I learned today is never, and this isn't just a today thing, but I did learn it again today, is that never underestimate the benefit of thanking somebody for doing a good job. And I learned that earlier on today. I was talking to somebody, not one of our employees, but somebody else that I'm connected with, and I thanked them for their support in getting some stuff done. And they paused and told me that that probably had been the best thing that they'd heard in a long time. And so you need to do that. So that is definitely something that I learned or relearned, and never take that for granted is an important part of it too. And then what was this? What did you want me to answer on the second part?
That's great. What are you grateful for today?
What am I most grateful for? I'd say that we got snow in Manitoba and the eastern half of Saskatchewan, because I was really worried. I was worried not for our business. I was worried for some friends and family and customers in that part of the country that were ruminating on the what ifs of not having moisture going into the spring. I wish that it would have extended a little further west. But I am very, very thankful for that. And I'm thankful for the conversations. I won't name the people. I had a couple of conversations early this morning with some customers that sent me text, and then I called and we had a quick chat. And I'm very thankful that for those conversations, because it also helps to level set when you kind of get put in your place by a customer. It's a good thing. So thankful for that too.
Yeah, it wipes out that ivory tower pretty quickly.
Yeah, pretty quick.
You kind of get up in the clouds, and then you talk to a producer, and it's like, okay, this is where it's really at. I agree with the weather. Like, it's like your health. You can have a lot of problems, but if you got a health problem, you only got one problem. And in farming, you can have a lot of problems. It's good to have 1,000 problems, but if it's too dry, like it was this spring, talking to guys, it's like, this is my only problem right now. And you can't really, it's not that many levers to push on with that, except start canceling, that tractor order, or, that seed treatment or whatever. But, and then it rains and you're like, oh, I guess I should have just kept it coming. But I am super grateful for this opportunity to talk to you and get to know you better. And I can see clearly why, you are in the leadership position that you are in. And for folks like myself, I mean, it's just invaluable to, I think some of the takeaways that I've heard today, it's really inspiring, about reading a book a week and taking care of your physical and mental health and how to communicate with folks. And doesn't matter how much technology we get or what they invent, what sort of artificial intelligence we're going to be dealing with. I mean, it's always that emotional intelligence of dealing with people continues to evolve and grow to be the most important thing in our professional lives. Doesn't matter, even our primary producers now, they don't operate in a void anymore. They're dealing with all kinds of people and all kinds of things. So good on you for doing what you've done, because obviously, the more you get to a place where you're at, the more opportunity for positive influence and having an impact. And when a leader like yourself reaches out and says, heartfelt thank you to somebody in your organization or outside of it, or just in general, that does mean a lot. So good for you, man. Proud of you. That's amazing what you've done. So thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, I'm thankful that you hit me up and said, "Hey, would you mind coming on?" Because it's always good to talk. And this is actually, although it's it's different doing a podcast. It's just good to talk, right? It's good to just chat around what's going on and sort of get reconnected with the world that is actually real. So I really appreciate the opportunity. It's been tons of fun, tons of fun.
Well, and so many people are going to appreciate hearing you talk and enjoy it. And you sound really good on that mic, man. You got to get one. That's what quality is all about, I'm telling you.
Yeah, well, it is. It kind of freaks you out a little bit every time out of the side of my corner of my eye, I see this thing poking me in the face. But anyways, that's okay.
It's all good, man. Okay, well, that's perfect. Thanks for coming on.